Why do you think the general population should care about this?
Number one, Web3 is not going anywhere. It's only going to become more relevant. One of the other reasons why I think it's so important for people to pay attention is because regulators are paying attention. And regulators don't pay attention unless they think something is here to stay.
Welcome back to another episode of Girl in the Verse, the video podcast. Today I'm joined by Dori. She's a former lawyer turned artist and entrepreneur. I love this story and I can't wait to dive right into it. Dori has established a successful career as an artist and designer. Her work spans across various mediums. We're talking original illustrations, art prints, fine stationery, acrylic blocks, and NFTs, digital assets. Dori, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast and I follow you religiously. So this is a very special moment for me.
I'm so appreciative and I love you right back at you, girl.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you get to be here today. And I'm like I told you before, for me, sharing people's stories is, I think, at the core, like my thing, my mantra, my whatever. That's it for me. And your story is it's so inspiring. And, it's why I keep saying, well, I got to get Dori on the podcast because your story is just fascinating.
Thank you.
I don't know if we can say this. You were / are a lawyer, right? Because you are.
I think once a lawyer, always a lawyer to some extent. I'm not. My licenses are not currently active, but yes, once a lawyer, always a lawyer.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, right, I'm no longer a journalist, but at the end of the day, I am a journalist. It is what I studied and practiced and what I did. But so Dori, talk to us. To start here. What was that like? So you were / are a lawyer. You are a lawyer. Let's say you are a lawyer. And now you've from lawyer to artist to now NFTs. Walk us through this journey.
So it's interesting. The transition from lawyer to artist was not direct, if you will. I've been a lifelong illustrator, starting from very early in childhood. I had no interest in attending art school because I knew I wanted to practice law and I wanted to be a collegiate athlete. So college was really honed in on where I was going to play soccer and finding a good pre-law program. After having practiced law for the better part of 10 years, I was then, home full-time with 3 kids, all of whom by year 10 demonstrated independently of me an interest in art. And I had been tinkering with the idea of formalizing this lifelong interest for quite some time. And a couple of things happened that were sort of the straws that broke the camel's back, so to speak. I historically would go into my kids' classrooms and help with projects. And inevitably, if I were drawing something at one of their desks, there would end up being a line around and requests from other students as to what I could draw for him or her. And so I was at a parent-teacher conference for my younger daughter, London, and at the end, Mrs. Giassio said, "Dori, I know this is about London, but I think you're a very talented artist and you should consider taking this to the next level." And then I sort of felt like the student. I said, "Yes, Mrs. Giassio, okay." So that was one thing that happened. And then the next thing that was really the primary impetus for all of this was after the 2016 election in the United States, regardless of one's political convictions, I think pretty much everybody would agree that the country became really divisive very quickly. And that wasn't just alarming to me as a citizen, it was alarming to me as a parent. And I thought, what can I do to try and put a smile on people's faces, set a positive example for my kids and hopefully others, and be proactive in a way that's organic, that is unifying, and hopefully just do something nice And I know that sounds very simplistic, but at the heart, that's really what it was about. And I decided in 2018, that's when I really got things going. And I thought if I'm gonna create artwork, it's gonna be celebratory and joyous. If I'm going to produce artwork, it's going to support as many small businesses, minority-owned businesses, local businesses as possible. So, for example, my cards support a minimum of 4 different local businesses in connection with their design and production. And ultimately, everything has a charitable component. So if I'm not making someone smile from the content that I'm making, hopefully, through the charitable component, someone feels good about, that particular aspect of it as well.
Now, fast forward all these years, right? What got you into NFTs?
NFTs to me seemed like sort of a natural extension of my existing portfolio. And on the one hand, I was very intimidated by them. I have the good fortune of being by far the biggest slacker of all of my friends. And a number of them, we've got securities lawyers and financial advisors and professors. And one of my good friends happened to, up until very recently, was the head of the blockchain laboratory at Wharton. And she's also a collector of my artwork. And she said, Dori, you've got to get into NFTs. You really need to start converting your artwork on this platform. And this was a little over a year ago. At first, my first question was, of course, well, what are NFTs?
Yeah.
Sounds great. What are they? And I spent a lot of time just learning about them before diving in. And on the one hand, it's incredibly exciting to be in this new platform. And I still consider us being in it very early.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting to be here and to be presenting in this form. But, the legal side of me, like my head exploded when I entered Web3. I mean, it just exploded.
So walk me through that, though. Walk me through
Yeah.
that, Dori, because obviously, this podcast is meant to help beginners, right? Really understand what this space is about. So walk me through that, because you're not the first. And obviously, I always say, you want to learn about this type of stuff, you have to go and do your homework. So you went home, you did your homework, you studied it. What was the alarming thing for you? Because I like that, exactly, like you said, you've got both sides there. The lawyer hat came on and you said, wait a second.
One of the first things that I wanted to find out was how my artwork, my ownership over my artwork is protected in Web3. And the terms and conditions that anybody signing on to sell on a particular, separate and apart from the smart contract, what are the terms of service that a creator is agreeing to when selling on a particular platform? What does the smart contract say? How do you grant or restrict the use of your artwork to a collector? And there's a very practical side to this too in terms of marketing. I mean, I'm used to a television interview, an article in a magazine, that type of traditional media in connection with my work. Where do you go for NFTs? How do you promote yourself? How do you promote your collection? I think I had 8 Twitter followers when I began this process. I didn't even know I had a Twitter account. I must have opened years ago.
Yeah.
And I've relied so heavily on Instagram, and even more so, I think, on LinkedIn, because it was where I also had connections in the legal profession. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, how am I going to convey my message to people about the scope of my work and the collection itself. I also had to be mindful of the fact that my collectors up until that point were exclusively traditional art collectors who wanted a physical piece of art. So not really knowing whether or not it would result in onboarding anybody into Web3, I spent a ton of time updating my website where I provided a section which remains on the website that is a general education for people on the foundation of Web3 and NFTs in particular. And I just tried to make it as easy for people to understand. And also with anything, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to say yes. So with my first collection, not being a huge fan of Discord, I will admit, one of the things that I embarked on was creating a concierge service for anybody who was interested in purchasing an NFT, but maybe didn't have a wallet or had other questions related to the purchase itself. So I had incredible students that I hired from the Wharton School of Business's blockchain laboratory, and they were on call for any questions that people had that were technical. Because that's another thing about Web3. You have to know what you don't know. You have to know that you have to be humble and appreciate the fact that, one, you're trying to hit a moving target by trying to understand it in the first place. But
so what's it been like for you? Right now, I'm getting the artist side of Web3 and NFTs. How do you define this space? Like, how do you define what Web3 is? How do you explain it to people so that they sort of understand or get what it is an artist who dives into this metaverse? How do you explain that, Dori, to people?
It's a different kind of gallery and a different presentation of the artwork. And the first thing I actually do for the most part is I explain what fungible means, which I didn't know.
Explain it to us. Explain it to us.
So fungible means easily exchangeable or substituted. So exchanging two fungible items will have no financial or other consequence. And the perfect example is switching two $1 bills with one another. There's nothing unique about either, and one is no more or less valuable than the other. And when I explain what non-fungible tokens are, collecting the one and only, I mean, in the traditional art world, the original is king. Everybody wants the original, or if it's a limited edition, one of those limited edition pieces. And what a non-fungible token accomplishes through a computer-generated code is proof of uniqueness. And that computer-generated code, authenticating the NFT, demonstrates to everyone on the blockchain that you are the singular owner of that particular NFT. The NFT is the closest thing that somebody will get to the original work in almost every instance.
You just described and defined non-fungible token. You know, you just said, okay, uniqueness, and right, it's sort of having like the OG, the original. Why do you think the general population should care about this, right? Like it's so hard for me to try to get my friends to care about this stuff. Why do you think it's important for people to understand, hey, wait a second, this is unique and this is an original, this is right? Like, why is it so important?
Number one, Web3 is not going anywhere. It's only going to become more relevant and more common. It's much like the internet was several decades ago, when people were very intimidated by it and thought perhaps it was a trend. So that's number one. Number two, you know, there's a crisis, at least in America, with trusting Web3 right now, between all of the financial scandals and bankruptcies that are taking place, the hacks. It's been very concerning. But one of the other reasons why I think it's so important for people to pay attention is because regulators are paying attention. And regulators don't pay attention unless they think something is here to stay. And so on the one hand, you know, court decisions, regulations, advisory opinions on how to protect consumers in Web3 are in the works and in some cases already established. And that will only continue to protect people as participants in Web3, I believe.
What's interesting here is seeing the creative side of people coming out and saying, hey, this allows me to be creative, to own my work, to sell it, but to also have on the blockchain that address that says this was mine. I created this. And I think for a lot of people, that's what's super important. How would you describe it as an artist for yourself? Because you're diving into NFTs. There has to be a reason, like what clicked in your head where you said, wait a second, I'm going to take this to the blockchain.
Once I illustrate my work, I automatically have it converted into a high resolution JPEG. So everything that I've created is already digital, in digital presentation. So the conversion process is very straightforward. I also think that I have a good deal to contribute to Web3 as an artist, but also, I'm not going to say as a lawyer because I'm not at this point giving anyone legal advice, but I'm hoping that I'm setting a positive example for people in how I conduct myself, conduct my business, and how I present my work and engage with other people in the space.
Now, why don't we talk about this NFT project? Do you call this a project? Talk to us about this new NFT project.
In March, for example, during Women's History Month, I'll be presenting a number of one-of-ones that focus on leadership through advocacy and really focusing on advocacy on the behalf of women, not just in the United States, but on an international scale. So while the pieces themselves will be consistent with that theme, so too will the charitable organizations that will be the beneficiaries. The Lawyering Project will be one. That is an organization that provides legal aid to women who are seeking to enforce their reproductive rights. And then there are a number of worldwide organizations, including the UN Council for Women, that now more than ever, especially with what's happening in Iran and other parts of the world, I think are really important to focus on, to recognize that women's rights are really human rights.
So even, just to explain it to people, how these NFTs can help this your cause here.
So with each purchase, a minimum of 51% of the net proceeds will be directed to one of numerous charities supporting women's rights, one of which will be the Lawyering Project, another of which will be the UN Council for Women, and potentially others as well. And so just by purchasing the pieces themselves, somebody is supporting advocacy for women in that regard, in addition to getting a piece that hopefully he, she, or they, loves. And that theme will reoccur, or that charitable purpose will continue with every different phase of the overall collection. So leading with love, for example, which is another phase of the collection, will not surprisingly have a lot of my heart within it, but organizations that are supported will really focus on those that help children and their families, such as World Central Kitchen, Project Sunshine, and those types of organizations.
That's beautiful. Now, I noticed too, and obviously this whole royalties topic has been just resurging all over again, right? Between marketplaces, between NFT marketplaces.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your decision not to include royalties in your smart contract?
Yes. At the outset, I cannot emphasize enough that my belief is that the creator is the sole decision maker when it comes to whether or not royalties should be collected for secondary sales. No platform, no third party should be involved in that decision-making process. The reason that I opted not to collect royalties, had a number of different considerations leading up to that. Right now, there are a lot of questions about whether or not NFTs are securities. And I think as a one-of-one artist who's trying to resonate with collectors as opposed to someone who's going to use my NFT for investment purposes. I'm not terribly concerned about any such conclusion being drawn when it comes to my work. But it is an open-ended question, and we're still in the wild, wild west type of environment. So I recognize that. Royalties are, very understandably important to a lot of people. And one of the reasons that I'm not collecting them is because for me, it's all about linking a collector who loves my artwork with my piece and supporting a charitable organization at the outset as well. With those primary considerations in mind, not collecting royalties justifies a higher purchase price of the NFT. And so I'm absolutely accounting for that when I price my pieces, because I won't have, a portion of the profits on a going forward basis. And there is a practical consideration for me. And this is, again, I can't help but be a lawyer sometimes, or a little bit more, I guess, sensible than I otherwise would be. The tax and accounting considerations, the oversight I would have to undertake to enforce the royalties, and when it comes to collecting them in perpetuity, I actually think about the estate planning that would be involved. This is not a primary reason why I'm not collecting them, but something that, did play a part in my thought process.
What do you make of, I know you said before, well, royalties shouldn't be enforced by third parties. Where do you see this NFT space going, especially now, we're fully aware it is the Wild West. This whole royalty debacle has resurfaced.
Yep.
What do you think is crucial for artists, in terms of protecting their art? Because we know, for a lot of artists, the goal with their NFTs is so that this art, lives, right? And that if someone sells it, well, they're still in the picture, right? They don't disappear as the art, moves on from holder to holder.
Right.
Where do you see this going?
I think that terms of service, smart contracts are going to both be looked at more forensically than they are right now. There are platforms where an artist could post or could market a piece, but the platform itself has the ability to change the description without notice. If your description, such as in my instance, the description's really important because it provides information on what a collector can and can't do with my work. If that's changed without notice, and that is a substantive change to how somebody can use my work, and in turn, a potential copyright violation, that's problematic. So I think that as unsavory as it is to go through all of that fine print, go through the fine print. And B, I think that just as there is really an emphasis on consumer protection in Web3, I think more and more artists should and hopefully will be advocates in the sense that this isn't just about protecting consumers, this is about protecting the artist. Smart
and I feel like,
sorry,
Dori, but I feel like that was the main core. Like a year ago, wasn't that the main thing? Like I remember when I entered the space, I was like, wow, artists, creators, we're all here saying we get to own this stuff. This is ours. We're making our rules. And then a year later, we're like, wait a second. It's still the big giants that are dictating what we're doing here.
It is. And I think that I've been in this space just about a year myself, not quite. And when big players enter Web3, it's very exciting, especially in this market where sales have been different than they were 18 months ago, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So when big players come in, or invitations come to participate on a platform with with a lot of name recognition, there is understandably this inclination to just dive in. You have to protect yourself. You have to know what you're agreeing to. You have to know how your art is going to be treated and what you're surrendering in the way of control and what you're not. And as a Virgo, as a very type A person, I have a problem delegating control. Forget Web3. I mean, just in general. So for me, I've been extremely, extremely conservative with the steps that I've taken in Web3, in large part because of those considerations.
Now, I wanted to ask you this question. Obviously, month of March is our month as women.
Yes.
What is it like being a woman in this space, in NFTs, in Web3, in crypto? And truthfully, Dori, when I get asked this question, I do the big eye roll like, oh, not again. Why are we talking about me being a woman? But for this month in particular, and because of who you are and what you are doing in this space, I think it's important for you to share your story. What is it like being a woman in this space?
There's no eye roll. I actually love this question, so not to worry.
I'm glad.
I do. I think that being a woman in Web3 is really an extension of being a woman in any other space. I liken it to my days as a litigator, where the area of law that I focused on, reinsurance, litigation, and arbitration, was largely male dominated. I was usually the only female lawyer in the room. And I also liken it to being on the soccer field. You have to think about your moves. You have to think about how you are going to play the game. And you need to be a leader. So I'm very conscious of how I present myself. I'm very conscious of where I choose to spend my time, because it can be really almost oppressive in terms of feeling as if you have to participate in all of these different spaces all of the time. But I also feel as if, leading by example is really one way. I think my presence and being a woman in Web3 is imperative. I also think that being a woman in Web3 is hard in a lot of ways, because you are facing many of the same challenges that you do outside of the space. What makes me even more excited, though, is that it's so early, and there are so many incredibly talented women who are forces to be reckoned with. Thank you very much. That I really feel encouraged.
I'm clapping
and you're
for us.
definitely, you are absolutely up there on top. You've done such an amazing job. You make it fun. Crypto's not that fun.
You
make it fun. You make it fun. And, I think finding that balance as a woman, it's not fair, but it is what it is. Women have to find that balance of letting their natural personality, be presented, and still make sure that they're taken seriously. Mm-hmm. That's always a fine line that I think about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, in my case, right, I do funny crypto news updates. And sometimes, especially when I go to these in-person events, people are like, oh my God, you're so funny, you're so this. But I'm actually, yes, it's funny. But now I'm dealing with, Dori, the fact that I want to also be seen as someone serious in the space too. It is funny. But then you have to battle the, okay, but I also have a brain and I'm serious here too.
The way that you're presenting Web3 to people is brilliant, because you're getting a captive audience. that just doesn't happen most of the time. To be
Thank
able, it's very similar, honestly, to a work of art. You want to capture a concept and convey a message, but people don't like being told what they're supposed to think.
Yeah.
So that organic process that you undertake, it's brilliant. I take you seriously.
I love that. Thank you, Dori. Well, I want to hear from our friends here on YouTube. Drop it in the comments. How do you feel about, being a woman in this space? Are you taken seriously? I really want to hear from our audience. Is this something that we should still be talking about? Because that's what I meant, Dori. Like I do the
Yep.
eye roll because I don't want us to keep talking about, well, she's a woman in the space. I just want us to talk about
Right.
her, what she's doing in the space, right? It's more for
Right.
that. But I really want to hear it from our audience here today. If you can drop it in the comments. Are we tired of being asked, what's it like being a woman in the space?
I do think one of the things that is going to change the conversation to some extent is when women are making tons, big sales are associated with women creators. I think that is, at the end of the day, oftentimes the wallet is what speaks the loudest, for better or for worse. And with all of the incredible women creators in this space, I'm excited to see that start happening soon.
Yeah, same. I mean, look, when I entered the space, I entered it at a time where it was all about these female-led projects, right? Now we're not hearing about them anymore, but I'm excited because I know that the women are just building right now. And for not to say that men cannot do two things at the same time, but women we're so used to we're so used to multitasking, right? So
Yes.
I know for a fact that although we're not hearing from the women right now in this bear market, I know that there are some women out there that are crushing it like silently, but they're going to come out
Listen,
and they're going to wow us all, I think.
silent but
Yeah.
deadly.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
Let's see
absolutely
here. I know I have more questions.
Have I been okay
Yes.
so far?
Yeah, I think we're good. We're good. I'm just now that I have you here, I might as well ask you a couple more.
Oh, yeah.
Dori, how do you see the NFT space evolving in the coming years? And what role do you think artists will play in this development?
It's tricky to predict something as unpredictable as Web3.
I know. It's a
Having
trick
said that,
question.
well, it's a good one. I think that even though it's devastating what's been happening in terms of security breaches and exploitation of people's trust in the last number of months, I think that there are lessons learned from those. And so I've been personally observing, and I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, that people are more careful and more contemplative when they're taking action in Web3, and more carefully considering, not that they were being that they weren't being thoughtful or careful about it before, but I think there's a heightened level of scrutiny in a positive way with how people manage their work and just how they conduct themselves in the space. And I view that as a very positive thing. So I do think that there will be regulatory oversight of NFTs and crypto in the coming years. It's inevitable in the United States. And I also think that there will be, more and more artists, more creators who are asserting their ownership rights over their work. The Hermes case is the perfect example.
Yeah, my favorite.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love that case.
Oh my goodness gracious. And I'll tell you, I was talking to a friend the week that it had gone to trial. My IP lawyer happens to be a partner at the firm that represented Hermes. And I thought, oh my gosh, what I would do to go to New York. And someone heard me and said, "Oh, I know the shopping is great, or would you go to Broadway?" I'm like, no, I go to the federal courthouse. There's an Hermes case. There's a copyright infringement trademark case, and
And people looked at
that
you
I
like,
lost all
you're
credibility
weird.
with that one. I lost all credibility. But I do think, it's been alarming to me to actually see some projects in Web3 where the artwork is identical to that of older artists who are either no longer with us or just unaware of the fact that their pieces are being replicated. So there will definitely be more oversight in Web3 and more protection.
That is something that I feel like I am trying to get more women to sort of understand, this concept of what is real and what is fake, right? Like
Right.
your Gucci bag, or your, the fake Gucci bag, or, any type of fashion statement right now, which is why I am very, very, like, I cannot wait for fashion and music to jump into they're coming, but because I
Right.
think still today, Dori, I think for certain people, they don't understand. Like, I get people telling me like, well, I don't care where it's from, but the reality is the creator, the artist, that person who designed it, they care. I
Of
care,
course. Yep.
right? The
Yep.
musician,
Yep.
when I tell people, that half of these musicians don't make the money, right? It goes all the way, it goes to everybody else except for them. And people look at me like, what do you mean? Yeah. Like, and so that's what I mean by, what do you think it's going to take for the general population to start understanding that this is much more than just art? It's bigger than art. This is about
Right.
who created it first, who was there, who started it,
Mhm.
who's
Yep.
copying them.
I think it's going to take education, and I think it's going to take creators of all types raising hell to be, pardon my French, when they see misuse or misappropriation of their work. It's, what's interesting, when I entered Web3, I could not believe the number of responsibilities that are imposed on creators that are not outside of this world. Coding, intellectual property, smart contracts, and then promoting your work, marketing, writing. When you're in a Twitter space, like the essentially public speaking component, there's so much more being asked of people in this space that even the best of art schools isn't going to prepare you for.
I was going to say, I cannot wait for it to get easier to buy something or to transact, right? Like, I cannot wait for myself to stop feeling like, will I lose this? Will this drain out my wallet? I cannot wait for it to get so easy as us buying stuff on Amazon today, right? Like, I always look back and think back my parents who were like, I'm not going to shop online. And now the next thing you know, Amazon packages are coming through my mom's house.
It's true. It's absolutely true. No, it's only a matter of time before it becomes mainstream. And I mean, how great is it that we're in as early as we are? We can shape it. You already are.
I know.
So,
well, thank you. I mean, I feel very, very lucky to have to have gotten here early. Feel like we got that golden ticket, like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. Like, we got here early. Now it's about setting that tone, and like what Dori said to us today, figure out what it is and why you are here, and build that up for yourself. And I know for myself, it's not a sprint. It's going to be a long marathon. Thank you so much, Dori, for joining us today. As always, you can find me up in the DMs. That is where the juiciest conversations are happening. I promise you. You can find me on every social media platform: Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You know the drill. I am everywhere at Girl in the Verse. I will put every link, to Dori's mint. If you want to purchase her NFT, her website, her Twitter, all the links will be down here below. I will see you guys next time.